This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon. This is Richard Maloney. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Commission. This is a special meeting. It is September 15th at 5:30 p.m. The first order of business is call to order. Present, we have Samantha Hills, myself, Richard Maloney, Matthew Clark, and Cheryl Mitchell in attendance, and I think we're awaiting Bill Rankin. He was
Bill Rankin is here.
Great. So we got Bill Rankin also.
Yeah, I'm calling in.
Okay, that's great. So the first order of business is to see if there's anybody from the public that would wish to be heard on any matter before the Economic Development Commission. Mike or John, could you see if anybody would like to say anything?
Looks like we've got 2 members of the public here, I think. I'm looking at it right. Ralph?
I'm here.
Your mic is green.
Yeah, I know. I'm just an observer for now.
Okay, great. Yeah, great. Glad to have you. So let's move on. So the first order of business is reports. I think we have the railroad project update. Bill had just emailed us a little piece on one of the prospective purchases or purchasers of the property. Bill, could you speak to that and give us an update?
Sure. The way we ended our last meeting was we had said, and Cheryl put some good notes together, that we were going to use the next month to speak with Phil Desiato. And the approach John first took was just to make sure that Phil was okay with the sketch that we had put together with regards to developing the acreage on Route 32 there by the New England Central Railroad. And John met with Phil on the 18th. I think it was a phone call as opposed to a meeting. And Phil was impressed not only by the sketch, but he gave the okay to John that it was all right for us to present that to the railroad for possible marketing of the project on the railroad's website. And that was on the 18th of August. I took that sketch after John and Phil spoke, and I forwarded it to Ed Foley with the New England Central Railroad, who then forwarded it to the G&W Railroad Group in Jacksonville, Florida. They will and have updated the sketch, as I forwarded to you just about an hour ago, but I had just gotten it late this afternoon. And the final draft of that will be sent, or that is the final draft, actually. And we need to run it by Phil just to get his approval, as well as contact info from whoever Phil designates, or if it's Phil himself, that if there's an interest, he will be part of and conduct the discussions. After John had his meeting, and then we forwarded the sketch to the railroad, I had a meeting with Phil face-to-face on September 7th, and I updated him again on the G&W providing the final draft and their need for contact info. I reviewed with Phil the current interest that is being generated by the Genesee and Wyoming Marketing Group from a big box supplier. And then we took the opportunity to hypothetically walk through some possible conversations that could happen going forth once there's a qualified interest. Some of the things we discussed, would you be interested in selling it as a full site or a partial site? Again, that would be not only dependent upon how Phil wants to address it, but also any interested party. Would Desiato be the developer, or would he prefer to sell to a developer? Then we got into rail discussions with regards to spur design and layout costs. And then finally, we talked a little bit about the access road and town discussion. So what we were doing on 9/7 basically was, let's prepare for the next step before the next step happens, and Phil was in agreement. The way we left it, he was uncomfortable with these decisions that we came up with, possible decisions that he'd have to make, and he wanted some time to prepare. I suggested that he speak with John and Mike and their firm, given their experience, as well as their engineering staff, as well as their involvement with the town. Long explanation, but what we said we were going to try and do at the end of the last meeting, John and myself and Mike were able to get Phil to the next step, and he looks forward to helping.
So, Bill, if I could,
Sure.
what would be, and so I'm intending to follow up with Phil later this week, just to see what he would like in terms of support from us. Once, if he wants us to be sort of a point person as well. If there are interested parties that want to reach out to him, Bill, what do you think they would want from him in sort of a first conversation or something like that?
Well, I think they're gonna approach the initial interest. We'll already have had discussions with regards to why this present geography with its radius of service makes sense. And that will involve discussions with the railroad as well as their own internal discussions. So once it gets to the tables, just like this big box interest right now, as you see, if you look through that presentation, again, I'm sorry, I only had gotten it to you. You'll see they presented 4 properties, 2 on the New England Central Railroad and 2 on the Providence and Worcester. At that time, when they look at these properties, to answer your question, they're going to look at rail access, cost of improvements, cost of building a warehouse or a distribution center or a laydown area. And finally, I think get it to the point where the developer or the owner says it's all or nothing, or if he takes the direction that he's going to put a rail in that will service multi-tenants, which I think given the size of this property would be the smart thing to do, that would be the next step. So we have an interest. Now we got to work through the economics. We also have to work through the zoning and the permitting. And we also have to work through the rail design. So he's going to be involved with a lot of input between the interested party, the seller, and the various staff around him. And the railroad, as you can see, if you reviewed that, they have those services and they offer those services. It's part of their marketing program. It's part of the development and commercial development process.
Okay.
So I think the next step is, is Phil going to be the developer? He does not have a real estate company. Or are we going to try to sell it to a developer? And the developer is going to want multi-tenants, which again, I think could complicate the access road as well as some of the zoning and permitting.
So as a sort of a bit of an aside, I guess, I'm thinking that at this point, based on where we are, probably one of the next things we should do once we finish with the reg stuff with P&Z is get an informal discussion with them going so that we can take their temperature to what they see the path forward being, number one, because if it goes well, assuming it will, that'll increase confidence. And number two, there's likely to be some regulatory tweaks that need to be made, and we'll be able to figure out what those are, who's going to do them. But I think that saying we've had an informal discussion with P&Z on the concept and they've actually seen a layout and they're on board with the use and all of that, is probably a good thing to have at this point.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you, Mike. I think, some of the options that were presented for this big box interest, there's a couple of those locations I know intimately. and they've gone down the road already, not only with what's available, some site work, but the town is on board with regards to being open to something like this. And when this big box program is in a hurry, because they were going to do it over in South Windsor, and they lost the opportunity over there, so they're behind schedule. So they're going to want to move on it because of their own forecast, their own budget, etc. But at the same time, I think if we have our ducks in a row, that when we have an interested party, that we have answered some of those speed bumps that often slow down discussions.
Right.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So my next step will be to just solidify with Phil that the town is here to help him and to kind of move him along the next step.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't uncomfortable. Phil would be a great poker player. He's got to get some answers internally, because I said, "What's your timetable?" And he said, "I'll get back to you on that." He says, "I have to confer with somebody." But I think he's a little uncomfortable about how to go forward, and I think a conversation with yourself and Mike would help him a little bit in that area. Just my gut.
So Mike, do you think that a EDC referral to zoning would be appropriate, or would you want to handle it internally?
I mean, I think it just needs to go and be put on their radar. So if that be a joint meeting between both boards, or if you want John to present the idea, or just one person go, I think it can be flexible. I don't think that they'll have a strong opinion as to who needs to present it to them. I just think we want to give them the opportunity to weigh in and get their feedback.
Great. Could you get it on their agenda, and then anybody from EDC could attend, and maybe Bill, you could be available to present a little bit of the theory along with John.
I'd love to.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Prefer
I can do that.
prefer it was face to face, because I'm not real good on these virtual meetings. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. That's all right. I can do it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You're
no,
doing
we can.
fine. Yeah.
We can get it set up. We're right now we're working through setting up the new tech in the town hall, but their meetings, their intent, and we've had one of them so far have been hybrid, so we should be able to do that.
Okay, great.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions from the commission members? Samantha or Matthew or Cheryl?
Nope, no questions from me, Rick. I was just going to request if we could approve the minutes before you moved on to the next item on the agenda.
Sounds good. Let's move on. We'll go backwards. Could we take a peek at the minutes? And I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of August 11th as written.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I'll second.
Okay, and Matthew Clark seconds that motion. Any discussion on the minutes?
Thank you, Bill, for your continued revisions. They are appreciated. It's a lot to write down, as you guys know. And thank you, John, for always sending me the link. I appreciate that too, so I could rewatch the meeting. It's much appreciated.
You do a great job, Cheryl.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for doing the work. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, we'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. The minutes are approved. Next order of business, we're going to move into old business. So we've got a couple of issues. We've got the South Willington Village regulations. I know that they've gone to CROG, Mike, I believe, and maybe you could give us a little bit of an update.
Yep. So the application went to CROG. There's actually, I'm just going to pull up to go through So basically, they gave their standard comment, which is that they've reviewed the plan and they feel that there's um, no apparent conflict with regional plans or policies, um, which is to say, it's fine, no issues. So the public hearing has been advertised, and the PZC will be opening the public hearing on um, this amendment and a number of amendments to the business zone next Tuesday. So John is gonna, I'll obviously be there. John is gonna be there to sort of represent the application as the applicant on behalf of the EDC. Certainly anybody else, any of the members can go. So the hearing will be open, and we'll be starting that process next week.
Great, thank you. I know that you're also, the second item on the agenda under the old business was the design neighborhood commercial. So I think that's what you guys are proposing for the 74 Route 32 intersection to kind of alleviate some of the bottleneck there on the design commercial in that neck of the woods. What do you propose, Mike, for that?
So yeah, so we're proposing a number of tweaks to a bunch of existing language related to the design commercial zone, which is, yes, largely that area. So we're tweaking some of the allowed uses which are permitted as of right, which would mean if you were going to have a bank or an office, let's say you wanted to have a real estate office of 2,000 square feet, you wouldn't need to have a special permit public hearing. That would be done through the site plan process. So we're still reviewing for compliance, but no public hearing. We are amending some of the permitted accessory uses to allow outdoor dining because that's required by the new state statute, but to also allow for what we're calling apartments above the main floor, so that if somebody had a commercial building and they wanted to have an apartment or two above, they could do that. We are tweaking some of the uses, including things like inns, bed and breakfasts, and basically sort of simplifying the approval process for things that are small in size. And then if they get in excess of 5,000 square feet, it goes for special permit. We're adding the term taverns, distilleries, and or brew pubs as an allowable use by special permit. And I'm just trying to buzz through here quickly.
What about parking? Did you address parking at all? I know I really liked what you had done in South Willington Village, that kind of,
Yeah,
parking by demand almost,
I didn't get there because that wasn't within this section, but we can definitely look at that. The other thing that we are proposing to delete, basically, we have a section called high intensity uses, and it says because of their potential negative impacts on the environment, certain things are considered to be high intensity uses, and it basically expands the regulatory review of certain uses, like restaurants, for example, or there's a handful of things that are mentioned in it, and it again creates some additional design criteria. We've talked through these a couple of times with different folks, and it's just more restrictive than, frankly, I think it needs to be. And a lot of the stuff that's in there is really not under the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission and would be dealt with by other agencies anyways. So we're proposing to essentially delete that section, among a bunch of other things. We're also proposing, and I'll stop talking after this, we're also proposing to delete the alcohol liquor requirement. There's a section. So there is a section of the regs which talks about various classes of permits, and there's like 5 or 6, and there's all these requirements for where they can go, and it lists the specific types which are no longer in compliance with the state's requirements, and there's all separating distances, and it says that only certain classes of permits are allowed in certain zones, which again checks back to liquor control, and it's really not ideal for us to have permits listed from another agency as how we regulate where something can go. We should regulate the use, whether it's a restaurant or a bar or a tavern, and what permit liquor control issues to them is not really something that I think planning and zoning should get into, because as Rick knows, there's like 100 different liquor control permits. And so I don't think that the type of permit that liquor control issues should affect where they can go in town. So we're basically just adding alcoholic, the service of alcohol as a special permit use, which ties to the underlying restaurant or brew pub or whatever. And I'll leave it there.
Great idea. Yeah, great idea. So any members of the commission want to chime in, ask Mike or John any questions?
I'm good.
We'll open up to the public too. I mean, this is an important topic. Anybody from the public want to chime in on these regulatory changes?
I think the only thing that I would just add while we're waiting to see is that the purpose of all of this, and I had this discussion with the commission, Willington is not likely a town where somebody with a big box GIS person sitting in an office somewhere is going to say, yep, they meet our traffic counts and our distance to Hartford and this and that, right? We're not going to have these sites identified through some geographic analysis that Starbucks is doing and all these other folks. So we need to be in a position where we can respond to the folks that show up and say, we're interested in doing this. And so our regs need to be they need to be nimble in that way, so that we can say, we think that's a really appropriate project and our regs already will work for that. So we're trying to set it up so that the commission has that flexibility. And I think probably one of the more important things that I should have mentioned is we're including a qualifying statement, which allows the Planning and Zoning Commission to decide that even if a specific use is not allowed, if it meets the intent of the zone and is similar to the listed uses, they can make a determination that it's allowable. So that we can have that flexibility, because the speed, when someone identifies a parcel, the speed to get it open is the key, and text amendments take way too long. And as someone who works in other towns in the area, I can say that the key is going to be how quickly can we get them to a green light. And I think the regs need to be changed to make that possible.
Yeah, I think you've brought a really good mix of, appropriate regulatory review, but not overburdening these businesses, whereby they look at this town and say, there's no way we can really jump through all those hurdles. So it's the first step to kind of have this really business-friendly environment in town. We're also going to look at, some sort of tax abatement program. When somebody comes at us, we're not going to foreclose that. We want to encourage it. We want them to come at us with a project, and we'll take a look at that. We'll bring it to the Board of Finance and see if we can, abate some of these property taxes for a few years for these businesses.
That always helps in new business, especially during startup. It does. We opened up in Chicago and got a TIF from Cook County, and it really helped us,
Yeah, the permitting process obviously will pay for some of these, staff requirements and staff, fees, but you have to be flexible enough so when these businesses come in and come at you, you can apply some abatement, some tax relief, so you can get them in here, get them in the door. Great. So hearing no further comments, we will move on to the next item, which is an update.
I have a question.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Yeah.
I just had a question. So is the public hearing on this next Tuesday? That's not with this group, it's with another group. I'd like to view that process, because I've never been through this. So how would I do that? Where would I go to find that link?
So that's on planning and zoning. Well, it's be town calendar, right, Mike?
Okay, good. I'm all set then. Thanks.
Yeah. So it'll be virtual. So you'll just hit the link just like this, and it'll be one of their agenda items.
I'm okay. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Is the agenda published already, Mike?
I just finished up putting the packet together, so it should be published tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to new business. We wanted to have a discussion about communicating with businesses. We're a rural community. It's very difficult. We don't really have a town center. We've got 3 different areas in town where people can, come together. So I would like to hear from the commission if there were any thoughts on how we go about communicating with businesses, if we have an email kind of chain, if we enhance Facebook, if we, do a little bit more on our websites. Anybody have any comments on communicating with businesses in town?
We were looking at updating the website as a possible tool for that, going back about a year and a half ago. I remember those discussions. I think this American Recovery Act will be reaching out to a number of businesses. So I think maybe that's a perfect time to say this is how we communicate. I think on this new business section here, items 1 and 2, I think can help each other in trying to get that going.
Right, we could dovetail in, this proposal for small businesses and nonprofit assistance program, maybe a way to reach out to these businesses, file an application, communicate a little bit more about what their needs and wants are in town. Sam, I saw that you had unmuted. Did you have a comment?
Hi. Yeah, no, I wanted to comment because I feel like this is like, where I kind of come in because we've talked about me doing stuff before. I'm sorry I've been kind of slack with some of the things. One of the things we could maybe do in the future in terms of determining what businesses have is do like a Google form survey that we can link to putting on the website, which could just ask them some some basic questions about maybe giving them some options with a multiple choice of things that, ranked voting of what types of things they might like, or just taking comments, like short answers, which can get populated into the Google form so that we can look at it in terms of like what they would want. That gives how we could best support them and getting ideas from them. And then I like your idea of email. So that should be an option that we put on there that people can maybe sign up for a listserv, and we could link like the article that we put in the Willington Wire quarterly. So, I mean, we could shoot for quarterly emails that go out as opposed to monthly. That might be lofty, even though it seems like it shouldn't be. Let's shoot for quarterly emails that just keep them updated with our news and anything else going on. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I
Those
like it.
ideas.
Yep,
Okay.
those are good ideas. Yeah. So how would we execute that, Sam? Any thoughts?
Execute which part? The
the
Google
Google form. Yeah.
Well, when I did a website for the, I was able to link the Google form, you just put in a hot link and you just say like, click here to take our survey. And it just links over to since we created a Gmail, remember I sent you the password and the info? I created a separate Gmail because we didn't have our email. Remember when we did that?
Yes,
so we
I do.
have a Gmail. I'm saying we have a Gmail account that's associated with Willington EDC, so we can just do it from there.
Okay.
And we can just link it on a separate page, or if we want to highlight it because we want to get the feedback, and then we could link the website to our Facebook page and kind of blast that to everybody that's interested in it.
So we would create the survey, and
Yep.
then we would use the Gmail account as the repository of the information, and we would advertise it on our website and on the Facebook page.
Correct.
Okay.
Because
good.
the Gmail account is associated with an entire Google account that has the oh my God, I'm blanking on what it's called. What's it called? There's a whole section. Anyway, whatever.
So why don't we talk offline about how to execute that, and then before I let Mike chime in, we had done a survey before, which was really effective. I mean, it was really helpful because it gave some of the other boards in town, the selectmen and the Board of Finance, an idea where these businesses were in their cycles. Yeah, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I was going to mention so when the WillingtonBusiness.com website went live, we, to the best of our abilities, did that. The business directory that's there's 124 businesses. We brute force sort of verified those at the time as best we could. So that was current as of when the website went live. And so there are some emails listed there. Anything we could obtain, we tried to call them or email or whatever and actually verify everything personally. So we have that business list. I just found it's as effective as of April of 20. Looks like it was last updated. But we did the survey that went out via email, so we have that email list as well. The other thing that I wanted to just mention, there aren't a lot of businesses on there, but perhaps it's another tool. The Willington Facebook, not the towns, but there's the sort of community Facebook, has a section under files where a local business can just post their information, and there's maybe 20 businesses listed there. So that's another way that we can grab the info.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So maybe talking offline, Sam, I don't know if you would be willing to, meet with me and anybody else on the commission that wants to meet, maybe come up with a strategy. Yeah, Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to participate in that. I've done lots of surveys. I can help out.
Great. So maybe we'll talk offline and then we'll bring this back to the commission. Yeah, go ahead.
Between us, and then we can look at seeing the emails. I wouldn't put those on like a listserv, but we could harvest all those emails and send out one time, like let us know if you want to be on an email list. So I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good. I mean, just like these regulations, I mean, we may be aware of them and these businesses don't know this is happening. I mean, that's a perfect opportunity to inform and educate and assist. So yeah, good.
Sounds good.
So I'll set that up. All right. Now we want to move on to the ARP Small Business and Nonprofit Assistance Program. I did send that along to everybody. I hope that you got a chance to review it. John and Mike had put together a really simple overview of purpose and eligibility for these small businesses. Obviously, the intent is to move this, America Recoveries Act funds out to the businesses as quickly as we can possibly do that. So my thought here is to I'll write a letter to the Board of Selectmen and I'll attach the draft ARP Small Business Assistance Program that we've developed here and ask them to go ahead and implement it along with staff, John and Mike, so we can produce an application and start to receive these small business applications and get some money into their hands. Any comments on that?
Hi, I'm sorry. Sorry,
Yeah,
Matt.
Matt, go ahead first. Yep.
Are we going to review the actual application? I had some comments on that. I don't have it with me, but I just had a couple comments on the questions that we're asking them and the rationale behind some of those.
Yep. So maybe you can email them to the group, Matt,
Sure.
And then we'll digest those and try to incorporate any of your comments so that the draft that goes over will have those.
So and so this is with the specific questions aren't really asked. Like we don't have a form yet. Wanted to make sure that we were on the right track with what the criteria were, what we were looking to do. So yeah, Matt, your comments or anyone's comments can help us sort of frame the application.
Yeah, overall I thought it was great. There's a couple of them that I would just say, we're not really going to use that information and really shouldn't impact them one way or the other on their whether or not they get the ACT funds. So we just delete them. I'll make some suggestions, like 2 or 3. That's it. Overall, I thought it was really great. So thank you for doing that.
Okay, thanks.
I'm just going to jump in because I have to jump off. I just wanted to mention that operationally, Town Hall, Erica had requested submission of projects for consideration for the ARP. And so I submitted this. So I didn't list a dollar amount, but I said that the Economic Development Commission is going to be requesting that a certain amount of funds be allocated so that they can administer small business grants to Willington businesses. So I submitted that to let them know that that program was going to be, because it had to be in. So the details, obviously, we don't have to, but I just want to let you know that it's on the list.
Great, thanks for doing that, Mike. And then we'll just dust off some of the details of this document internally with the commission members and send that over. Okay, terrific. Any comments on the ARP, Small Business and Nonprofit Assistance Program?
Hi, yeah, I have comments. Samantha
Yep,
speaking.
go right ahead, Sam.
Probably my comments would just echo what Matt said. So there was something like regarding, a small description. Well, I think we should change up to the, they just really short description of how the funds would help their business, how it would create resilience, make them more resilient in the future. But at the same time, if we're going to ask those questions, I think we need to be transparent with like the metric that we're using to judge whether those reasons are good enough for us, type thing. I don't like to use that phrasing. That's kind of layman phrasing, but it's definitely putting qualifications on it. So then I think if we're going to do that, then we need to be clear on what qualifies a person. And then the other question I wanted to ask was, is audit something that came from the town? Because if their town is saying that at any time we can audit your funds, we need to put also clarifications around that. Very clear about when, the timeline for auditing. We don't want people to live in fear like, oh my God, a year from now they might come and say, how'd you use this or whatever. So those were my only comments. And like you said, I could be happy to put in an email so that everybody can see it and make their own comments on it. It doesn't take up too much of the meeting. But thanks.
We're thinking the same way, because I had the same comment. I mean, I didn't think we should be auditing anyone at all anyway. So.
Well, so here's the
group stuff.
And in just clarifying that, and perhaps audit isn't the right word if it's a term of art, but the purpose being these funds are available to the town to push out basically insofar as there is a nexus with the effect of COVID and the ability to sort of recover and regroup from that. And so being good stewards of federal dollars, these are not town dollars, these are federal dollars. The town is responsible for monitoring the expenditure of this. And, the town can't go buy itself an ice cream truck because that's not what the funds are for. And so there needs to be a little bit of accountability that if the town is going to push these to businesses, and I absolutely believe we should, that there does need to be a nexus towards the purpose of the program. And so insofar as the town is accountable, those businesses that are receiving monies from the town ought to be accountable also. If the right word is not audit, that's fine, but it's not, first 20 people to hold up their hands get a $15,000 check for free. And so, whatever language we need to put in to make sure that the town can go and say, all right, so these people, I don't know, whatever it is, a computer system or something like that would make them more competitive, or web upgrades or something like that. We need to be able to let them know that it's, this is not dropping money down a dark well and don't worry about it. So I'm happy to wordsmith it, but I think we do need to make sure that people know that this is not just free money from the town and we don't care how you spend it.
Samantha, go ahead.
It's not a windfall.
Like that, but if we're going to talk about, like you said, we want that, the applications, or we want the Economic Development Commission to be accountable to the town because the town is accountable for the federal funds. So if that's actually true that it's some type of grant that they have compliance with, then we should all know what those what the reporting is like so that we can do accurate reporting. That's all I'm saying. If it, like, as it comes down to us, we need to flow it back upward if that's
Right.
actually true. And I mean, I'm not saying it's actually true down in their saying, but I mean, if whatever compliance they need to report, we should know about so that we can be also in compliance.
So that's what I tried to do with the written statement, and I agree,
Right.
Sam, that we should make those descriptions brief. But that is trying that narrative we requesting of businesses should describe precisely the stuff that we're looking for. It should describe how your business was affected, how these monies will help you recover,
Right.
and that's how these monies need to be spent. So if someone puts in an application that says, our business was fine, but I would love a new Vespa scooter, that person's not going to get the money, and so we need to be able to tie that back in those written statements, that there's a nexus to the effects of COVID.
Definitely. I think you're going to flush out those people who would be doing that just by asking for, them to demonstrate that they were impacted.
Right. And yeah, we have no intention of, I think this probably will become very much a first come, first serve thing because everyone was impacted in some way. But, I just want to be able to have the document that if it comes to that, if the federal government says, hey, where'd you throw this 300,000? I just want to be able to show.
I just had one further question about it, which is, you said somewhere, I don't have the document in front of me, I just closed it, but you said somewhere that it's kind of going to depend, like the amount will depend on how many requests we receive. So does that mean that we are going to put a deadline on the requests, wait for all the requests to come in? And forgive me if we already discussed this, but are we going to do that and then wait for all the requests come in, assess them, and then determine the number paid out so that we don't get into a first come, first serve situation?
That's kind of up to you guys. I mean, we could set, a framework deadline of availability, or it could be first come, first serve, because it's possible. I don't know if it's likely, but it's possible that there might not be sufficient demand. If we set this at a $15,000 cap and $300,000 total, you're talking basically, if everyone maxes out, that's 20 businesses.
20 applicants max, minimum.
Yeah, it's possible we might not get that, but if you guys want to do it first come, first serve, let's do it. If you want to do a specific application timeframe, that's fine too.
So let's take this draft and let's see if we can amend it a tad, get more clarification, and then we'll bring it back up next month and see if we can approve it.
Our next step.
I would ask anybody that has a comments on a markup or whatever, just send them directly to us.
Great. Thank you, John.
Our next step then is to actually put an application together. Is that our next step?
Yeah, we'll put that. Well, I would say, it depends on how quickly people can get comments back to me, and I can generate a revised draft of the program description, and I could do an application form at the same time. And ideally, we could have something, basically set for this commission to approve at the next meeting.
Great. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, let's do that. I mean, we want to get this done and get this over to the first selectman's office. Good. Thank you.
One more question, Rick.
Yeah, go right ahead, Bill. Yep.
How do we foster the awareness of this? How do we get the message out? That's why I think what you said earlier, dovetailing this in with regards to lining up businesses to be involved in development in the town is a great idea. But is the awareness out that this program is eligible, or is it still at the town hall level?
Yeah, I think it's at the town hall level. I mean, if people are watching closely, they probably know that the selectmen have been soliciting, suggestions and things like that. But I think we would rather have this in play to know what the money is before we start letting businesses know.
I agree.
Right, and then once it's approved, we'll go ahead and put it on our Facebook page. We'll send out emails to all the businesses that we know of. We'll put it on our website. Yeah, we'll bang a drum.
Smoke signals, huh?
Yeah, and word of free money travels fast.
We're all dealing with these people, whether it's restaurants or kennels or doctors' offices, and they're still going through this. So because of the town and the amount of business we all do in a town with a number of vendors, it should be easy to get the word out.
Well, great. So hearing no further discussion, we were going to do an update on all the ongoing projects in town. Mike has stepped off, so I didn't want to burden John with that at this moment.
No, well, I can just say that we're going through sort of another draft of comments on the lot SIP program regarding sidewalks and pedestrian improvements down in South Willington. DOT didn't want to include that pedestrian island right in front of between the school and the parking lot across the street. We had proposed a pedestrian refuge. DOT was pushing back on that, so that's kind of in negotiations right now. And then Mike and I have had sort of ongoing conversations with some potential developers up in the Ruby Road FedEx area. Folks looking to site or kind of kicking the tires on distribution facilities, data centers, things like that. And so Mike and I are just sort of having very preliminary informational conversations about what town resources are in place, what zoning says, what's the regulatory process for getting a big facility. But we're talking like another FedEx type thing, but we're kind of working through that preliminary discussion.
That's positive.
Yeah, no, it's very positive. I think that the big acreage and the highway interchange are very positive attributes over there, and frankly, a town willing to consider something.
Right, and it goes back to the work we've done on the Desiato property. We'll do the same type of work for any developer, any business that wants to come into town and is looking to kick the tires. I mean, let's talk to them. Let's see if we have to amend the zoning regulations. Let's determine if it's appropriate for the site. And let's move forward. Good. Thank you, John.
Yeah, and we'll keep,
anybody?
If there's action items, we'll certainly keep you guys in the loop.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from the commission members? Anybody from the public want to make a final comment for the commission?
I think the public has dropped off.
All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Matt Clark made the motion and Bill Rankin seconded it. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.